of Tomb Raider, straight up. I actually like the trilogy, even the third one. I know, crazy, but like at this point, I think that whole thing has ran its course, and I want to see a complete fresh redo of Lara. I also just want to return to classic style Lara. I know there's a big section of the Tomb Raider community that wants to see something like that, because at this point, that would actually be kind of fresh. So if they could do a new spin on that classic thing, I'd love to see that. And with the fantastical elements and stuff, like, it's cool that the newer games incorporated some stuff, but like, I want to see her going back to like fighting mummies and dinosaurs and weird shit, you know? Let's get some ghouls and goblins in here. I don't know why I say ghouls and goblins like Christopher Walken. Ghouls and goblins. But just the TLDR as of right now, it's codenamed Project Jawbreaker. It's gonna have realistic elements and fantastical elements with a fresh new Lara, and the romance plot is interesting because I just picture Lara as like the loner. She don't need anybody. Just adventure and treasure and cool shit. But maybe the story will be worthwhile. Maybe this isn't even true. Who knows? But a very interesting story. It took the internet by storm, certainly, and I always just think Tomb Raider is worth talking about because it's a classic game that I grew up playing. Hey, next up, big thanks to Omaze for sponsoring this video. Enter for a chance to win an unplugged Tesla S Apex Plaid and support a great cause, the Juju Foundation. And this Tesla is absolutely wild. Over 1,000 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 1.99 seconds. Tons of special limited features and just a beautiful interior. This thing is so nice and scary. And like I said, with entering for the chance to win, donations support the Juju Foundation, dedicated to the support of youth initiatives and lifting the spirits of those in need. Cool initiatives like a bike giveaway, providing bikes and bike locks to underserved youth, to providing funds for instruments and music education, to a scholarship program. These are undeniably good things, they're doing great work, and the prize is really cool, so it's a win-win. So to potentially win an absolutely sweet, unplugged Tesla S Apex Plaid and support the Juju Foundation, just head to omaze.com/GameRanks. Once again, that's omaze.com/GameRanks, and thanks to Omaze for sponsoring our video. And in other news, it seems like EA is warming up to single-player games again. As you guys probably remember, for a while, it seemed like EA was the harbinger of, like, single-player games dying off. Just straightforward, regular old single-player games as they started to really embrace just multiplayer and games as a service stuff. Now, they're changing their tune a little bit, thanks to statements made by CEO Andrew Wilson, the American Psycho-looking dude himself. That's mean. I shouldn't say that. Maybe he's nice. But the quote is that single-player games are a really, really important part of their portfolio or their mix of products. However, it is also worth noting that like one of their CFOs was also there saying that it still makes up a very small percentage of their profits. Like something like 3/4 of their business is all multiplayer and live service stuff. I mean, think about it. They have FIFA and FIFA Ultimate Team, which brings in $1 bajillion million. But they've said specifically that they are working on ways of doing focused, good single-player games that'll, you know, bring them some money in. Obviously, a lot of this is connected to them seemingly learning something from Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which was a very traditional-ass video game that was pretty straightforward, single-player, narrative adventure, and it did well. People really liked it. So, now that they got a whiff of that, they're back on their old shit. I mean, like, the fact that we also have a Dead Space remake dropping soon, like, I'm happy to see them at least trying this stuff. Even if it doesn't generate all their money, the fact that they are maybe seemingly starting to respect the medium a little bit again, I'll take it. Next up, in news I did not see coming for a million years, Beyond Good and Evil 2 is back in the news and is seemingly alive. So, they've just gotten a new lead writer. Shout out to Sarah Ariano for getting this gig. That's a pretty sick gig. And, I mean, this thing has been in the works on and off for like 15 years, which sounds insane. 15 years, I was like a child 15 years ago. The ups and downs with this game, everything about it, like the Wikipedia page for this game is like an epic novel. So many things going on. So I don't know what to think about this, but just to see it resurface and to see someone get a paid gig and a job, cool. So I want to know what the deal is. So what do you guys think? Do you think we're actually going to see this game ever? What are your hopes and dreams for it at this point? Let me know. Also, some things I wanted to link in the description down below, just some trailers and little videos that dropped this week. The first is a trailer for Dead by Daylight Resident Evil stuff, once again, this time highlighting Wesker. And this is a badass reveal for Wesker. I am just a Wesker fanboy. He's so cool. I want him to be my mean dad. I don't play Dead by Daylight, so that's all I have to say about that. But also, I'm linking a trailer for a new narrative-driven game that quietly launched this week. This is called South of the Circle. It's got a pretty cool, pretty abstract art style that I'm really into. Again, don't know too much about it yet. Haven't gotten our hands on it, but if you have, love to hear from you, especially if you like those types of narrative, story-based games. I just finished As Dusk Falls. I thought that was pretty cool. If you saw my video on my channel. So yeah, more of this stuff is always cool. Along with that, Insomniac confirmed on social media that the PC version of Spider-Man, which is launching, I think, in like about a week or so, is going to be playable on Steam Deck. Which makes me so happy. I'm a Steam Deck fanboy, and if I can play Spider-Man on the go, like, straight up, whew, I'm done. Bye. See you never. Goodbye, world. Also linked, this week, IGN had an exclusive to reveal, like, all the skins for Gotham Knights, and they're actually pretty cool looking. The video is really long, and it's more about the concept art and stuff, so I did link a video from Legacy Gaming. It's only like 6 minutes long, where they just kind of concise if you want to get all you need to know. They're a really good channel for info. Just wanted to give them a shout. I've been watching them for a while. So yeah. Now in other news, a bit of an interesting story, and I think it's interesting for different reasons, is Sony talking to the Brazilian government courts specifically about regulation and the game industry, and you know, all the fact that every company is buying up everything all at once. So this is pretty interesting because it's Sony and some other tech companies specifically speaking to Brazilian regulators, really explaining how things work. And the biggest thing that really got pulled is the fact that Sony basically went to Brazil and they were like, you guys don't understand. Call of Duty is a really big deal. They went as far as to just kind of explain how big of a deal Call of Duty is. That it drives console purchase decisions, and it is a behemoth to the point where it's employing more developers and more studios than anything in terms of a lot of publishers combined. And the fact that even with all of their resources, if they put everything together and tried to make a competitor to Call of Duty, they couldn't, just because it's that big of a beast. I will link the reading down in the description because it is pretty cool inside baseball business stuff. A lot of people are using this to fuel like console war acquisition conversations. Like, I'm not interested. The console war shit bores me. But it's pretty interesting from them just being candid, speaking very candidly about the state of the games industry. They are basically describing the fact that Call of Duty itself, that machine, that well-oiled machine that churns out a massive, huge game every year, is like a sub-industry, an industry in and of itself. And they're almost like, you know, how the American car manufacturers were, where you can't just make a car company and just compete with them easily. Granted, things change, but still. What I like about this essentially is that, like, you know, when you see corporations do stuff and it just seems so tone deaf and you're like, they're not listening, they don't understand. The way Sony's lawyers are specifically describing the game industry shows that they are acutely aware of everything going on. It's really just a matter of, like, when they decide to act. Does that make sense? I don't know. Like I said, this is pretty interesting reading, so it's all going to be linked down in the description. That's just my take. I want to hear yours. The other story worth pointing out is that it seems like Square Enix is interested in selling off more. As you probably know, they sold a lot a couple of weeks back to Embracer Group, including, you know, the rights to like Tomb Raider and a couple other more like Western style studios. So now they're wondering like what's going on with the rest of it, and it seems like they are poised to sell off more. According to this report, them selling off Tomb Raider, Crystal Dynamics, all that was phase one of them consolidating and doing a lot of that. So you could expect to hear more. A really good analyst does a really great breakdown. He's smart. I'm not. So I will link that. There's some good insight there, specifically around the companies that are likely to gobble up these properties once they put them out on the market. Basically, Square Enix is smelling the money on the table, knowing that Sony and Tencent and Nexon, like all these companies are out there buying stuff, so they're going to probably take advantage of that. What they're going to sell off, and then what they're going to focus on internally, I assume just a shit ton of Final Fantasy, but, you know, that all still remains to be seen. Still pretty cool, interesting stuff, so I want to hear from you guys in the comments what you think about all this stuff. That's the news that we got for you this week. Gotta get back to playing some cool games for before you go videos. Next week and the week after. Got some good stuff. So, let me know what you're thinking about all these stories with Sony talking about Call of Duty, with Beyond Good and Evil ever returning, the fact that the Halo 2 challenge was beat. Did you watch that live stream? Have you been rooting for this thing to be beaten? Did you give it a shot yourself? And also, like, what do you think about EA talking about single-player games? I very much believe that, like, you know, talk is one thing, but action is the other thing. So let's see where it goes. But let's talk about all this gaming news stuff down in the comments. I want to hear from you guys. We'll be down there as much as possible, of course, like I always say. But if you want to yell at me directly, because things get a little hectic down there, just find me on Twitter and Instagram at Jake Baldino, or my other channel, Jake Baldino. You know. But that's it. So I hope you guys have a very nice weekend. Thank you for coming around and watching. Be well, be safe. Click the like button for us. Thank you. But that's it. Pizza's on me. What was that long pause? That was very like, I'm shocked.
Hmm.
I've seen things that would scare you shellers.
More conservative and less like, oh, let's do cool, ridiculous stuff. Just because as I've gotten older and richer.
But I get that for sure. But the question is, like, Alex Jones is the culture warrior.
Yeah, but that's see. But what he cares about,
Right.
like, you know, Alex
business
pretty
and-
well. I think he's one of those dudes. I think he actually believes he's doing the right thing, and he actually cares about truth. And the dude's been ringing the Epstein bell for 15 years.
I agree, which is why I'm like, if he actually had this money, wouldn't he be doing substantially more to push this stuff? See, this is what I don't get. And look, it really does come down to my personal worldview versus what other people think or see, right? It's just that simple. Some people make $62 million and then they're like, better put that in my trust for my kids or something like that.
Yeah.
Me, I'm like, we got Michael Malice, Luke Rudkowski up on billboards in Times Square because they've been on this show. I respect them, but I also think it's important to have their presence be expanded. And I got to tell you, one of the things I'm most excited for was that we got Luke Rudkowski. Do you know Luke of We Are Change? I'm most excited about getting him up in Times Square on multiple billboards because he's the guy who only a couple of years ago walks up to Donald Rumsfeld and starts questioning him. One of the few people who's gotten in the face of these CEOs and these big corporations. Right. And I was like, it's going to be the funniest thing in the world when his face is looking down on Times Square. And then this guy who actually had the balls to go and question all these people is going to be, of significant influence. That's what I want to see. It doesn't, it benefits us because it's a Timcast ad.
Right, of course.
But I'm looking at this like, if we make enough money, How can we have a bigger impact on just making things better?
Dude, that's awesome, and I'm with you. I'm just gonna and I'm not arguing this is right. I'm just
I hear
telling
you,
you because I've seen I know a lot of people who are pretty well known. I've come up with them, and I've seen the change in them. When people have something to lose, right? Like when someone's young and just starting off, or just got momentum, and you don't have anything to lose, man, it's easy to do risky shit. As you have more people dependent on you, as you accrue more, most people become more risk averse. And quite frankly, like when you start having a lot of money and you're able to turn, let's call it youthful idealism into reality, you start being an actual threat to people in power.
Oh yeah.
And then when that lens turns on you, and I've had it turned on me, not quite the way Alex did, but it's a lot, dude. It's a lot. And so, like, again, not saying he should or shouldn't be a certain way. I'm just saying there's a reason that very few people retain their idealism through wealth and power.
Yeah. You know, and I'm not trying to single out Alex on this one. There's a ton of wealthy people who speak up and then seemingly don't do all that much. But, you know, there are a lot of people you'd think should do more but do a lot. I'm not going to name anybody, but they're powerful individuals who fund stuff.
Yeah.
And then but my question is, we've got cultural problems in this country.
Yep.
We've got cultural stagnation, cultural decay. We've got a culture war. And that's because there is no forward-facing, no brazen, no adventurous, no heroic, no challenge, no figurative threat to no one ruffling the feathers up or anything like that. I think we need to get more people to figuratively throw a pie. That's what I keep saying to people. I'm like, dude, what did you do? How much money did you make this year? And then you bought what? Like you did nothing with it. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, man. That's just me, I guess.
I'm with you.
I would be happy living in a van down by the river, and everybody knows that's true. And that's why I'm like, okay, let's put up these billboards and just keep doing this crazy stuff, because I want to see things get better. I want to see a positive impact. I want to see positive cultural change. I don't see a benefit or a point to just having $60 million in a trust sitting somewhere.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm on board. Let me tell you two things. One, I don't mean this in a negative way. I've seen it happen to me. Just wait until you have a wife and kids and you have like real money, and that'll happen soon enough. It might take 10 years or whatever, but like it'll happen.
But what is real money?
I mean, like whatever you consider real money to be, you're like, you have that plus a zero.
So right? Do you mean like there comes a point where you're like, I thought I was rich, but now, wow.
Yeah.
But
right. No, your views are going. I don't mean this like, oh, you're gonna learn about the real world. No, dude. You might still be super idealistic and doing all kinds of cool stuff. I hope you are. That's awesome. Just understand, like it's very easy from a certain position to say, well, that person in that position should be doing that. They have all kinds of forces working on them that are almost impossible to imagine until you get there. And I'm telling you, someone who started with nothing and went through all these phases. You know,
I just kind of feel like it's at every step of the way. You know, I'll tell you this story. I remember watching a video about climate change activists or something. They went to like an oil executive's house.
Yeah.
And then they were protesting, and
right.
and then he comes out.
Right.
And he sits down with them, and he was like, say it all.
Yeah.
And then they started yelling at him, and he just sat and listened. And then they were like, what do you have to say for yourself? And he's like, I completely agree with everything you said. Like, we're trying to figure this out. And then he rebutted with 100 plus million people, 200 million people driving cars every day, and they're telling us we have to do this. And so we're trying to figure out, how do we be better stewards of the earth when you have 200 million people who are making demands? And if you stop producing the oil, then the government comes in and says, why did you stop? People are screaming at us and demanding you do it. So you can't just... The point was, this dude at the highest level was like supposedly the villain, and he's like, but I agree with you. The problem is the machine is controlling you. So my thing is like, then you got to just one day wake up and be like, I don't care for the machine. So, look, I'm saying...
That's easy to say.
Yeah, but $60 million? Come on, somebody
hold
can
on. How did you get me defending the machine? I hate them. Like, I am the anti-machine. No, here's the thing. I fundamentally agree with your premises. The one thing I want to go back to what you said before for a second, when you were like, people need to do this and do that. You know why I think so many people are so, what does Malice call it, black-pilled right now? Is because...
Well, he says people are... Oh, right,
no,
right,
he's white-pilled, but
Right,
so
you're right,
many
you're right.
other people black. Because I think the old American story broke, right? And whenever it broke and however it broke, it's broken. It's shattered. No one believes it anymore. And no one has replaced that story, right? And so that most people are followers, not good or bad, they just are. And right now, the dominant narrative in America is a very toxic, destructive death cult. Like whatever, CRT or wokeism or that whole conglomeration of narratives are horribly anti-human and depressing and toxic. And there has been no narrative to replace it. And we're not going back to old school American exceptionalism. That's not going to work. That story, right or wrong, it's broken. And no one believes it anymore. So what's the next story? What's going to replace that? I don't have the answer.
Yeah.
Transhumanism.
Man,
I mean,
Well,
the
no,
metaverse,
no
people becoming
way,
cyborgs.
no.
We've already got
All
our
right,
phones.
Elon.
Well,
Look what we're doing now with
way,
zero
Elon.
money. We're displaying to
No way.
100 million people.
I think your point is, simply put, I think most people are looking at the culture right now and thinking, I have nothing in common with these people,
Right.
so I won't do anything for them. What's the point? And so, I describe it as like our government, for instance. The Titanic hit the iceberg. They saw it happen. Everyone else is clueless.
They're
They thought-
abandoning ship.
but they're stealing.
are.
They're stealing the silverware.
They're stealing
as
everything
do
they
it.
can as they do it, yes.
They got their vests loaded up with silverware, and they're in the lifeboat lowering it down. Just a routine test.
Yeah.
Just gonna go talk. We'll be right back. And you're like, where are you going with all that really expensive stuff in that boat?
Yeah.
That's what I see happening in
Yes,
this country.
agree.
But I think that's a good explanation for why we don't see more people. I think a simple explanation for Alex Jones is probably that that's top line. They're claiming he has more money than he really does.
Yes.
Because Alex, I've seen his tank. I've seen the stuff he does when he
Right.
drives that armored vehicle around.
Yeah.
He does spend a lot of money on this stuff. But I'm just wondering, for how many culture warriors there are. I shouldn't say I'm wondering. I get exactly what you're saying. I think most people have a large self-interest and then a smaller altruistic interest.
But with no story, a lot of people will put resources behind a great movement. There's no great movement right now. I know a ton of people with like stupid money, private plane, private island money, not like me, like way more than me, and they're all sitting on it. Because even like people
That's
who
boring.
like want, you know why? They don't know what to do with it. And I don't just mean they don't know how to invest it or they don't know how to make money. Because there's plenty that just care about making money, right? But the ones who want to do the right thing, who would love to back the next thing or help,
I know
they don't know what to do.
I know you are correct because I have seen very wealthy people talk about these issues and they are clueless as to what's
Utterly.
causing it.
Utterly.
Well, and I used to be a fundraiser. Like I remember when you would get people who would come in and say like, I want to do something, I'm not sure. And they are very susceptible to whoever messages them. I mean, that's what a major gift officer for a nonprofit or a school does. They court people who need direction on how to donate their money.
A really good example, I think, is look at all of the Twitter alternatives that exist. Like, okay, you got Gab, you've got Getter, you've got Truth Social, you've got Parler. This is a really good example of, I think, what the issue is that people are like, hey, Twitter's banning conservatives and people who are challenging the establishment, so let's make a new Twitter. And the actual reality is the technology and the platform is not the problem. The problem is culture, the cultural dominance, and the issue that the people who run these companies like Twitter, they are ideologically driven.
100%.
So when you have a group of people who are well off, not particularly ideologically, except that they support free speech, they don't know how to solve the problem. They say, let's make a new Twitter. Congratulations. Nobody uses it. There's already a place people are fighting with each other and arguing. What you need is like an Elon Musk to buy the Twitter. Right. That's a clever move. But what I said to some of these people when I'm sitting in these meetings, I'm like, you guys, you really don't get it. It's a cultural problem. You need someone like Michael Malice. You need a masterful troll to create a cultural shift through a large cultural shock, which is why, I mention my view on things is maybe where I'm getting things wrong is people absolutely are spending money, but they're not addressing the culture problems.
No, they're not.
They're spending money on technology, they're spending money on new companies or new buildings or things like
stuff.
that. Or stuff, but thinking this is a positive move to change things. Yeah. Meanwhile, the culture keeps churning in the woke cult direction.
Yes. Yeah. About 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I really kind of started to figure this out. And I'll tell you what I'm doing now. It's like, and I don't talk about it a whole lot publicly just because I'm kind of at the beginning stages, but I moved to bought a land, moved to a ranch, right? But not just like I'm going to go be a prepper or a homesteader. Like, we're definitely homesteading, but I bought in a place that a bunch of other people I knew were there, and then a bunch of other people came. We started our own school, and now like almost everything I do now is I do one of two things. Either I think very, very locally, like where am I buying my stuff, right? Like where am I getting water, power, food, etc. Like who am I buying from, right? Are they in my community? How am I supporting my community? Who am I bringing into my community? How are we connecting? How are we interfacing with each other? Not to like have some island or some cult somewhere. I mean, we live in Texas. We're a town in Texas. There's a bunch, but like, I want to think as much as possible locally. I think that if there's going to be a thread that is a true counterculture thread, it's going to be around, think about how disconnected and detached everyone is from each other. The opposite of that is not just interpersonal, it's as much as possible local. I mean, obviously I can't get my oysters locally. I live in, the desert, but like, as much as I can, I want to interface and know my neighbors and interact with them and buy from them and sell to them and create our own economy. We have our own school. We literally just started a school. We got 80 families and 100 something kids.
Wow,
in
that's
it,
cool.
right? Like, it's just, I mean, because who wants it? Public schools are a disaster.
Yeah.
Like who wants to send their kids to, I don't even want to get you blocked on YouTube, but to public schools now, right? Like, and so that idea has just started on some with a lot of people. I think that's going to be one of the main ideas, but not the only one. I don't know what it's. If I knew, I'd be shouting it from the roof.
I want to jump to this next story because I think it hits at the heart of a lot of what we're talking about. This story's been going viral. I covered it a bit in 4 p.m. Employee wards off 3 robbers with a knife, stabs one multiple times at Las Vegas smoke shop.
Yeah.
Of course, we got to censor these images because these are brutal images. But I'll tell you the gist of the story. Guys working at a smoke shop in Vegas. Dudes come in. One guy immediately robs him. The next guy jumps the counter. And the clerk just says, okay, with a knife in his hand, and just starts going at the dude who jumped the counter. Now, a lot of people are saying that was it a legal use of force because he gets this guy in the neck a couple times and the guy says, I'm dead. The reason I think this is in the previous segment, we're talking about, why are people keeping their money, hoarding it, not really investing in their communities and stuff like that. And I think this is a really good example. Yeah. This guy was attacked. And what people are worried about is that he will go to prison for defending himself.
I know.
And so it's things like this. When people say, I'm out. If we're sitting here looking at the story, thinking that you could be minding your own business, someone can jump the counter wearing a ski mask, and you are legally required to back up and wait for them to draw on you before you have a chance to actually defend yourself. That's the reality of this country in many states.
Yep.
At that point, a lot of people are just like, don't care anymore. I'm gonna watch out for myself because you will get boot stomped by the machine if you try and defend yourself.
In New York, California, totally. That's why all the Californians. That's why Austin's so expensive now. It's because of this, like some
crime
stuff like this. Yeah, it's a huge part of it. Yeah.
I mean, if you're in Florida,
you saw the dude in New York, Jose Alba, right? Like that guy.
The old guy with the shotgun.
Yeah, like the old dude who it was in New York, the bodega guy. Remember the guy who killed the guy was beating him up, like beating his ass, and he stabbed him, killed him.
Right.
I mean, it couldn't have been a more clear-cut self-defense.
The girlfriend stabbed the store clerk.
She tried to or something.
No, she did. She got him in the arm.
She did.
I'm pretty sure she got him in the arm.
All right.
I could be wrong.
Well, it was the most clear-cut self-defense I've ever seen.
This Jose Alba?
Yeah, that guy.
He's leaving and going to the Dominican Republic.
I would too if I was
2
him.
hours ago from New York Post, yeah.
Yeah.
They dropped the murder charge and he's out.
The only reason the prosecutor dropped the charge is because everyone in the country was in a total uproar. And the mayor, Eric Adams, was like, all right, just let the dude go.
Yeah.
Like, it's exactly what you're talking about.
Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yeah, exactly.
The fact that there were people in this country that had no idea what happened and wanted him to go to prison. The fact that he spent 2 months, or it wasn't 2 months, it was almost 3 months in jail, and then they were like, "Oh yeah, I mean it was self-defense." It's remarkable that anybody who watched that was just unquestionably it was
Of course it
self-defense.
was. Just watch the video.
But most people didn't watch the video
I
because
know.
that one is the wrong narrative.
But they believe Jesse Smollett. Yeah, welcome
Well,
to
the same
America.
people that believe Jesse Smollett are the ones who, when they watched the Rittenhouse trial, were like, "Wait a minute, he didn't shoot a bunch of black people?" No, like, do you
They have
remember?
no idea. They
Do you
have
remember how many
absolutely no
people
idea.
were like, "Wait a minute, he shot 3 white guys who had one of them had a gun, and the other one like."
And he's on the ground, and the guy runs up with the gun,
Right.
and the guy,
They were shocked.
the guy's accused of saying that he regrets not killing him. They had no idea. And then you saw some of these people came out and they're like, I was wrong about that.
Some
look,
did. A minority did admit it.
But most people didn't. They kept going with, well, this is wrong.
crossed
This is
state lines.
this is like injustice. Our system is so biased. It's an example of systemic racism that they never tried to fact check themselves at all. They never really looked at the case again because they're not really interested in it. They're interested in their own narrative.
I'm sure all of these really wealthy media people are watching shows like this, and they're hearing me talk about stuff, and they're laughing like, "What an idiot!" The fact that I would say I would rather invest in the company than hoard the money and hide it somewhere. They're like, when it all comes crashing down, and it is because they all see it coming. Taiwan, China, Russia, whatever it is, I'm going to be left holding an empty bag, and they've been stocking their money up in Panama and El Salvador and crypto and wherever else.
Their money might not be worth much.
Yeah, but if you spread
things
it
go
around,
really, if things go really sideways, you're in a way better spot than they are. Well, think about it. You're on land, you have guns, you have friends, you have food.
yeah, but they do too. These people have been buying up in Idaho and Wyoming and building compounds and
So,
fortresses.
I'm gonna tell you a quick story. So you're right, that definitely exists. But you know what's gonna happen if things go really sideways? Not like a little COVID-y, but like sideways.
Civil War.
Or short of it could be like short of Civil War, but sideways. Bro, how many people you think that work on those compounds in Idaho are going to give their lives for rich out-of-staters?
Yeah, it's not gonna happen.
Okay, and then let's go a step further. You're head of, let's say you're a super billionaire who has a huge estate outside of Sun Valley. That head of security, that guy who, he was former SF and he's got his family there and he hired the whole crew. And there's like 4 dudes that all report to him.
He's the billionaire now.
He's the boss now.
That's right.
That's what happened with the Roman Empire. I mean, the head of
The generals.
Praetorian Guard would just kill the emperor and
Yeah.
become the new emperor.
Yep.
That happened with multiple times.
This is the thing people need to understand too. Like, your point is absolutely spot on. You own land.
Yep.
So I mean rhetorically, obviously, but because you talked about it. But I'm saying like you think you own land just in a rhetorical sense. What does that mean?
You're renting it from the government.
You've got a piece of paper that says on this date so and so owns the land. What do you think's going to happen when it hits the fan? You're going to walk onto your land and there's going to be a dude with a gun. And he's going to be like, it's my land. And you're going to be like, but I have the paper. And he's going to be like, and I have the gun.
It's gonna be like the land grab when people were going west. They're
Yep.
just gonna sprint.
That's. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of smart people are focusing a lot of time on community, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of when I first got into this, a lot of people are like, oh, defense, have guns, and I'm like, okay, guns are cool. I'm into defense, but I'm one dude. If a gang of dudes come, I need neighbors. I need friends.
Well,
I
and,
need
like,
other people with guns.
This is like an old-timey Western thing, but like if you're not home and your family's home, you need the rest of your community to be like, we're gonna head over there. They
Yes.
seem to be in trouble.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. One dude with a gun is useless against a gang, but a neighborhood gonna win, gonna make it.
Yeah, this is what people need to understand too. The left likes to talk about how they're like you know what did Joe Biden say? You're gonna need nukes to go up against the government.
Like the Afghanis? You
Yeah,
mean?
like the Viet Cong, they had a hard time. But the thing is, it's really simply put, a drone can't occupy a street corner.
Nope.
So if you really want to seize assets, resources, and control a city, a civilization, you need boots on the ground instructing the people what to do.
Well, my favorite about that is there was someone, I can't remember, it was one of like Max Boot or one of those lunatics who was like, blah, 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 what are your stupid AR-15s going to do against drones and like Predator drones and all that stuff. And I think it was Clay Martin, who's a total badass. He just responded to Max and he said, hey, the people operating those drones, they got addresses and families? Okay.
They
Like
don't-
it's the same thing, man. Like, dude, people don't realize, like,
Do you remember the Space Force thing? I got to bring it up again.
Which what?
That the uniforms, the Space Force uniforms were like jungle camo or whatever, desert camo. No. So when they announced Space Force, they showed a photo of someone wearing a uniform, and it was like, what is it called, Chris? The green camo they wear?
They have different names for it, but it's like ACUs were the ones I wore.
But is that a reference
BDUs,
to the color?
It's just the design.
Yeah. So everybody was laughing. They're like, it's the Space Force, but they're like for the jungle.
Green camo, yeah.
So then people started making photos of uniforms that looked like outer space.
Yeah.
And there was like, immediately someone said, where do you think the Space Force is fighting? And they were like, they're on the ground running satellites. Secondly, if they were in space, they would be in spaceships, not floating around. And even if they were, why would you want them to be invisible?
You're floating in space. You want someone to notice.
So you can set up an ambush in space, obviously.
Right. But my point is, all of these people who are making fun of the idea, they are extremely ignorant.
Yes.
They have no idea how reality works. It's funny because we started doing sales for emergency food supplies. Yeah. There have been how many disastrous floods where people get locked out of resources?
All kinds. There's one just happened in Kentucky. A horrible one.
And when you get your supply lines shut down and you spent $70 on like a food bucket so you know you've got freeze-dried food to eat, that's not about the apocalypse.
No.
It's not about, but they're all laughing. Like, and now they're like, food shortage is coming.
Yeah.
And so my point is just, man, you've got a group of people in this country, people who watch shows like this, who are interested and looking for nuanced context. And then you've got people who are just like, tell me what to do and how to do it and who to make fun of.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they all live in douche cubes in cities, and they're all going to be in trouble if all of the policies that they love, like, let's have green energy. Cool. Where's that coming from?
Natural gas. Well, did you see that there was a wind turbine that was spraying oil?
I did.
And then everyone went, huh?
Yeah.
There's a ton of oil. It's got to spin. It's got to
lubricate.
Yeah, yes. Exactly. I mean, at fair point. It's not burning the oil,
right?
But they still require a lot of oil.
Do you know how much ungreen energy it takes to manufacture one of those? It's insane, man. Those things have to run for like 18 years to break even.
Yep.
I think. And don't they have a lifespan of like 20 or 25 years? A lot of them.
I don't know.
Insane.
But people don't realize that. It's like, dude, please read about energy. Okay, like fossil fuel energy. We're talking about crude petroleum. We're talking about natural gas. It is ready to be converted.
Yes.
Green energy is you have to convert all these materials into a system that can then convert other energy. So it's like a second layer system. I'm a fan of solar for one reason. Not that it's more energy efficient or more green, but that it can give you your own circuit. Yeah. So all the energy that goes into the production of the panels, you can then have an isolated circuit. You can be off the grid. Yep. That's great. Yeah. But you need sun during a storm. You don't got it. So now you need batteries.
Yeah. You need a supply chain with solar.
I'll just simply put, it's scary when you realize the majority of people, or I should say at least Democrat voters, but probably a lot of conservative voters too. They don't know what they're voting for. They don't understand layer 2 of an issue. No. The left is just like Greta Thunberg. We got to ban fossil fuels now. It's like, okay, 60 million people dead in 3 days.
At least.
Yeah. And I think there's estimates of like 1 billion people dead in a year if you cut off fossil fuels.
No, the carrying capacity of their Earth is somewhere between 500 million to 1 billion without fossil fuels.
Yeah.
That's it. Like that's just so okay. Put a room full of people. 1 out of 8 get to live without fossil fuels. That's it. That's the reality. I mean, like that, it's crazy to me. It's not really even debatable. You look at the math on that, especially if you want a quick transition. If you're talking about a 50-year transition, okay, maybe it's a little different. But you're talking about a quick transition? No.
I'm thinking about like tapping the vacuum for energy, like the vacuum fluctuations and stuff. There's so much technology, fusion, for instance. But I don't think that the power structure wants people to have unlimited energy. They want them attached to a grid so that they can monitor it and make sure no one person has too much power. What does that mean?
Let me pull up this next story here from Blaze. This is crazy. CEO says 2/3 of ammunition deliveries have gone missing with UPS. That's a lot of ammo. So where is it now? All right. Maybe this is just one company. Patrick Collins, CEO of the gunfood.com, says he's lost thousands of dollars worth of ammo because customers' orders don't always seem to make it to their doors, especially when delivering with UPS. He says about 18,000 rounds of ammo shipped through UPS. Only 1/3 were actually delivered. So where is it going? Okay, now hold on. One company,
First off, 18,000 rounds of ammo is
Right.
not
Nothing,
very much.
nothing.
No.
So my first thought when I see this story is particularly sensational,
Yes.
also kind of alarming if it is part of something greater. And I think that's kind of what they're hinting at, that things are starting to break down. So you've got now, what are they're going to be hiring 87,000 IRS agents, and they're giving them hollow points. Right? They bought hollow points for the IRS.
Oh man.
And then Gates introduced the legislation that was like, no, we're not going to give them ammunition. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it's just, the reason I bring this story up is not to insinuate that one company seeing their ammo go missing is indicative of a collapse, but just like it's another grain of sand in this heap, with IRS agents being armed, with Taiwan, that maybe the fourth turning is upon us. You're familiar with Strauss
course,
Out.
yeah.
What do you think? And do you think this plays anything into it?
I mean, there's a lot of people. I'm not sure what I think about cycles. I'm generational cycles. I mean, like, I know enough about physics to know all energy moves in waves and cycles. So it's almost certainly they seem to make a lot of sense, right? I don't know. And then fourth turning is just one of many different historical cycle type things. Yeah, I don't think you have to know anything about cycles to just look around and be like, a lot of shit is hitting a lot of fans right now.
What do you think happens to a city like New York if the supply chain just was halted?
All right, well, so not this past winter, but 2 winters ago, I can tell you what happens to a city like Austin when the supply chain breaks. Because I was there for the winter apocalypse.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember
Yeah.
this?
Yeah.
Okay, so like I grew up driving in, I spent 7 years in Chicago. I know how to drive in snow. And no one in Texas did, because it's all Texans and Californians.
My first year in Dallas, I remember having to drive everyone around because they couldn't do
They
it.
have no idea. And so it snowed a lot. And so for 7 days, basically everyone was locked in. But really for 4 days, everything was truly down. By the beginning of the 4th day, one of the people who worked, I was still at my company, who worked for my company, she lived like 8 blocks from the office, was walking into the office, right? Because we were all remote, so like we could keep working. She had people trying to rob her, but like these are clearly not professionals. It was like a dude who was hungry, right? And I mean, my company was 75 people full-time in Austin at that point, and they were all like millennials who were like, LOL, I have Cheetos in my freezer, I don't know that's all I have. Like, I had to drive. I had just gotten a cow slaughtered, and so I literally drove like 200 pounds of meat in to the office, and then a bunch of them walked in to get it. Wow. Dude, shit went nuts there. There was 5 and 6 hour lines to get like a bag of pasta. Yeah. It was bad, man. And this wasn't even like the grid didn't go, grid kind of went down a little bit, but like it was bad.
This is what I'm talking about when I tell people, like when I do a pitch for emergency food, I'm talking about this.
Yes.
And like sometimes it rains.
Yes.
So, but you get all these leftists that are like mocking the idea, and then when it actually happens,
Yeah,
this is why I think they're gonna eat each other. Like it's gonna be, and that's like, bro.
But I think part of their...
Hold on, do you see the New York Times already saying the time for cannibalism or whatever? They're writing about it.
Listen, go ahead, have fun. You're in New York. Go eat your neighbor. I don't care. No, seriously, I don't. If they want to
Eat your neighbor.
No, if you want to belong to a death cult, then you get to reap the consequences. I don't belong to that. I've prepared. I'm around a bunch of great people who are all ready to. I don't need to worry about it. Like, that's
it's like
their
zombies.
problem.
Like, but I mean literally. If you have people who live in New York City, they've prepared for nothing. There's clearly signs indicating something is hitting us right now. The food supply, we've been told over and over again since the start of the year.
The president said it in a press conference like 3
they're
months
still
ago.
mocking the idea that they would do any kind of preparation. And so I'm just like, it's a zombie horde.
Yeah.
They don't think for themselves. They don't care to solve problems. They are just standing there in the crowd, mindless, and then quite literally, if the supply chain collapses and you got 2.5 million people on Manhattan Island alone, let alone central Brooklyn. How do you get out of central Brooklyn?
You don't.
No.
You stay there.
But I mean, like, stay there. You're gonna have to try to get out. There's not gonna be food, and people are gonna be. It's gonna be nightmarish.
Yeah. No, I mean, it'll get abandoned prison camp bad.
Yep.
Like maybe 5 days.
I wouldn't be surprised if you see slavery.
Oh, way past that.
Yeah.
I mean, roving gangs, warlords. Like, it doesn't take long to get there in a true grid down situation.
What do they say? You're 3 meals away from a revolution? Something like that.
No, 12 missed meals?
Well, there's like a saying. It's like
I think it's
3
96 hours and 12 missed meals.
Is that what it is? A
I
saying?
think.
And then people just start losing it.
Yep.
And then also, where do you get your water from? See, here, out here, there's a river, and we also we have a creek as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then so we can go out and
You're great.
and
You're
then
good to go.
and then I've got emergency filters and I've got
Mm-hmm.
other stuff, but we also have a well. We got a well.
Yep.
And so if everything went south and the grid shut down or whatever, I'd be like, just another old day, I guess. We got tons of backup batteries. We've got a massive solar backup system at the new facility we're building.
Yep.
But people in these cities, when COVID happened, they're locked in their apartments. They have no food and they're losing their minds.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's
I
like
know.
a stress test.
Well, we just saw it in Shanghai.
Yeah.
Like, they went on a hard lockdown, and no one knows how many people died there. You know, the Chinese are real sketchy about that, but all those videos coming out, people were like
You see the pictures of people taking the refrigerator? The guy takes the refrigerator and pushes it onto his balcony. It's open and empty. Because they had no food.
Yeah.
People were losing it. I remember when it was Hurricane Sandy in New York.
That was bad.
I was
it
in
was
New
real bad.
York, and it was crazy to see how high the floodwaters got. Windows were smashed out from the surge. The coolest thing I saw was when the downed bus stops, skateboarders were grinding on them. So they were having a blast. But then you go to the bodegas, there's no electricity.
Nothing.
So all the perishables have expired within a couple days. And I went in, there were 2 guys outside holding like 2x4s. A big line. And they were like 1 person at a time. I walked in, cash only obviously. And the guy was just like, he's like, don't touch the perishables, like the milk, everything's bad, you don't eat it. But anything that's not perishable, like the high fructose corn juice and like the canned stuff is good. And so I went in and I was like, I got like a Coke. And I was like, it's warm, you know, but it's all you get. Yo. And the other thing too is people don't realize how quickly it's gonna go to the 1800s.
Yeah.
No more cold drinks, no more ice, no more ice cream, no more flushing the toilet. Nope. You're going back in time real quick.
Yeah, and then the question becomes, how long does it last?
Oh, for them, so I put it this way. New York gets supply chain disruption. Like the whole system just fails for some reason. You get a couple days where it's guys 2x4s guarding the bodegas and people going in. 3 days after that, the food's gone.
Yeah.
And now it's people fighting in the streets with the last can of beans. 3 days after that, people have already started trying to
done.
leave.
Yeah.
They're going to be eating fish out of the Hudson and they're going to be barfing and sick the entire time.
But I think the other thing that happens, and this we saw this during COVID, is those who can, like wealthy people who can afford to move more quickly, will move into upstate New York, Connecticut, parts of New Jersey, and then continue to put pressure on those systems that don't normally have that many people there. So those grocery stores will start to feel the effect.
You know
and
what
it'll
you're
ripple out.
missing is after the rich people might go fast, but then what happens? You know, you hit days 5 to 10 when all the stores are empty. If nothing's coming in, what happens is people start moving out, and not the
Right.
rich people. The people walking,
Everyone has to go.
walking out.
Yep.
And not a few of them.
But Manhattan is an island.
Tens or hundreds of thousands.
So you've got a few bridges and tunnels.
Right, that's it.
Bottlenecking the whole
I
thing.
know. Did you see how they put? It's so weird you're talking about this because they just put those massive metal doors on the tunnels on the
No.
Lincoln Tunnel.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah,
You didn't see this?
They called them
dude.
flood tunnels, but they're not flood tunnels.
They're getting ready to lock everybody in, dude.
I think so. I know it sounds
What?
crazy to even talk about this. This sounds lunacy. But they just, like I saw, it was like a month ago, wasn't it? Yeah, Lincoln Tunnel has one, and I think the Midtown Tunnel. I think all of them, maybe.
What do I search for? Flood doors?
Yeah, flood doors, Lincoln Tunnel.
But what about how do they stop the bridges? You know?
I'm
Oh yeah, look at this.
not sure. Yeah,
These
there you
things?
go.
Yeah.
This is a couple years ago, actually.
No, so one of them, like I know, just went up.
44,600-pound floodgates installed in NYC tunnels to protect from superstorms. Maybe it's because of Sandy. They were like,
It's
okay,
not unthinkable. Yeah, it's
yeah,
not.
it does both.
Yeah,
Stops the water and the
and the people. Yeah.
You can go north out of Manhattan. I mean, there's still rivers to the west, but I
Yeah.
mean, you can walk north. There's no. It just
Well,
goes up into
You
New
can
York.
walk, but like if things are in that much chaos, how far are you really gonna get on foot?
oh man, a leak in the Lincoln Tunnel in 2020. People were freaking out, so it could be why. But I do think it's funny that they put up these big barriers.
I know, dude.
Bottlenecks. It's gonna be like, you know, you see the Batman movie where the cops block all the bridges and like nobody leaves the city.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. You know, look, when we were talking about World War I the other day, the crazy thing is people don't realize how quickly things fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just like, was it gradually then suddenly?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that people underestimate how quickly things can fall apart because they're told to sort of live for now and live for impulsively. I think this is a lot of like left-leaning culture that you wouldn't think ahead. Like when you say like people make fun of people who are acquiring food because they're like, oh, what do you think? It's going to be a doomsday? It's going to be a purge all at once? Like, no, not necessarily, but also you can't think past the 2 days in front of you because the impulsivity culture and the self-indulgence culture tells you that it's not worth dealing with.
Well, yeah, that, and then also, I mean, like in 2019, I made fun of preppers, and I didn't really. I had a couple guns, but they're like hunting. Like I wasn't.
You've converted.
Oh, to 100%, of course. And well, how could you not after the last 2.5 years, right? But I think it's also that like we've grown up in arguably the richest, most abundant, safest period in world history, in the safest country in world. So it's like, who alive has had to deal with anything truly catastrophic? Like I don't know, you know? And so like the idea that this could happen is just it's not in the living memory of anybody.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, we've had a golden ages of sorts. At least from our perspective, we've been, the security's been
Fat and happy.
Fat and happy. I know we've had problems. I know there's been a recession. I know there's been 9/11, things like that.
Come on, man. We've been fat as a culture and as a
Right.
country. We've been as fat and happy as it gets.
And growing fatter by the day. I mean, now you know where body positivity comes from? You've seen,
Of course.
It's because too many people.
Because everyone's fat.
So they're all now agreeing with each other that we're
Well, this
okay
looks
to do
good,
this.
yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, go ahead.
They've got
See how
that,
that works for you.
They got that store that what morbid, torrid.
Oh, yeah, Tord.
No, I call it morbid on purpose.
I was going to say, did they really call it more?
It's called torrid. I call it morbid. Close enough.
Tim's gonna buy it, call it that, and be like, still shop there.
No,
see what happens.
I was thinking of opening a store and calling it morbid, and it would just be like huge clothes.
Chonkers.
But that's a meme, so that's okay, right? But that's America. That's America. So I guess my next question is like, how many days until people are eating each other in New York? Like the tunnels are closed and they're banging on the door and they can't get out. There's no food.
There is. I can't remember it. I read a book about survival that had like a chart. I think it's under. It's way faster than I thought. It's under 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the
3
exact-
days?
No, not 3 days. They start eating each other. That's a pretty big taboo to cross. That would have to be. I think that's in week 2, but not by the end of week 2.
That's why I feel like week 2. I mean, you can go a month without food, right? But I guess
most people can't.
When your muscles start breaking down, you're just.
And there's going to be so much panic. People are going to feel the desperation sooner than if they were intentionally.
You know what would happen though? I bet the first person to get eaten, it's not going to be like some dude just goes, "I'm sorry, I'm hungry," and like hit somebody.
Yeah.
It's going to be like somebody falls down and gets trampled, and then they're like,
"Well, let's eat." Yeah.
Yeah, let's eat.
Like you said, it's like in Lord of the Rings. Meat's back on the menu, boys. Yeah.
Dude, it's nightmarish to think about this stuff. That's why we got like 50 chickens.
No, that's why I have 2 cows and a flock of sheep, 24 sheep and chickens.
I was reading about bugs, and what's the protein called? Chitin? Is that what it's called?
I don't know. I'm
Is
not
that what it
going to
is?
eat the bugs,
That's
Tim.
their carapace. It's made of that stuff.
Yeah, and I was reading you can't digest it. It's
Chitin?
like chitin or whatever. Yeah,
Something like that.
you can't digest it.
Yeah.
And so that's why you let the chickens eat it.
Yes,
and then you eat
the chickens or the eggs.
You eat
right?
the eggs, and then when time comes, you eat the chicken.
Yeah.
And then it's amazing. Here's the best part: chickens, they make more of themselves.
Yes. Yes. They replicate.
They replicate, and then they just eat the grass, and you just got to make sure nothing else eats them, and then you get to eat them.
Yep.
And they taste good.
Yep.
You were talking about like how our society doesn't have a story right now.
Yeah.
I'm a kind of obsessive about talking about new technology like graphene industry and iron fertilization of the oceans, regrowing the coral reefs and things like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's really about how you introduce the ideas, because like if we're in the moment of all like blackpilling each other like what we
It's
did.
not tech. I promise you, that's not the story. Tech might be amazing, and it might help us in a million ways. But the general feeling from most people is that God has failed.
Then the other idea is monotheism and God and the unification of the consciousness. But like, I almost feel like I'm selling out when I do that.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that, man. Like, I've been atheist my whole life, and then I did psychedelic medicine, like, as a therapy, and I was like, oh, shit, I'm totally wrong. Of course God exists. It's just not in the way that religious dogma talks about it. It's more of a all things what... That might be, but that story... might be a little airy-fairy for at least right now. I think generally, revivals generally happen after people have suffered a lot. We're going into the suffering phase, not the
Fourth
revival
turning.
phase. Yeah.
2028 should be fun though. 6 more years. I'll be in my 40s.
I don't know. I think we got at least a decade. There's a lot of unraveling to happen.
I kind of like what's the worst case scenario for somebody who lives for someone who lives out in the middle of nowhere? I mean,
Asteroids strike.
no, I mean like with
straight up.
society
Cometary
collapsing.
No, hold on.
Not going to invoke a meteor strike.
This is really important. Living out in the middle of nowhere by yourself, you're actually not. You're better off than in a city. Not in a great spot. Being in the country with a community, that's the better spot. Like where you're not way off by yourself. You're actually an easy target. You know, and you don't have anyone around to help. You know, whereas if it's like us and like 8 neighbors, or you kind of know your neighbors, that's a different situation.
Build a fortress around your.
Doesn't necessarily have to have a fortress. Like it doesn't have to be a castle, right? You just have to kind of know.
Dude, I joke about like one day we'll be hanging out, we'll be doing the show, and we'll hear like a noise, and then we'll like run outside, and there'll be some hipster guy in like flannel with a beanie on and a handlebar mustache trying to steal a chicken, and he's like, I'm just hungry, and we're like, stop him, chase him down. He like
Absolutely
he fled Brooklyn.
Dude, in Texas, all you paint your fence posts purple, and you put no trespassing sign, because that's basically if you come on land, we're gonna shoot you.
Purple?
Yeah, purple.
That's like the color
That
for
is
Purple Heart.
Why is that?
I don't know. It just picked that.
That's blood
That's
color,
the
man.
color, and like
That's deoxygenated blood.
no, dude. One of the weird things about Texas, like animal rustling, you just shoot. Like if you have animals in a field and you've posted and whatever, and someone's in there, like no, that's where you can shoot them in the back. It doesn't matter. You're not going to prison. Yeah, like you don't steal animals in Texas. You get shot.
yeah.
It's bad.
Yep. Yeah, I'm sure those laws go way back.
Do you think that because I think we are building the story for the future right now. Maybe nothing we say today is gonna cause it to change tomorrow,
Right.
but in 20 years, when people are like, "I've had enough,"
Right.
they'll look at this video,
Right.
and that will be what inspires them.
Right.
What do you think? Like psychedelics, God, consciousness?
No, I mean
technology?
psychedelics are just a tool. I'm not like I like psychedelics. I use them as medicine. Like they've been transformative for me. But I'm not like bless his heart. Like I love Aubrey Marcus, but I'm not like everyone's got to do ayahuasca. No, everyone doesn't. Like they're just a tool to achieve a goal. They're not the thing. Like imagine if I was super into hammers. Like what why? But if I'm like I want to build a lot of houses for people to live in, you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So I just look at psychedelics as the hammer. Right?
I've always kind of felt that there's a lot of people who really need some kind of
Hammer.
experience. Hammer. That's one way to put it. Because I don't want to.
Hammers are important. Yes.
But I don't want to. I don't mean just like one thing like DMT or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people are like locked in their minds. They can't see outside the box.
It really shocked me awake. With the first time I took mushrooms, I was walking around Manhattan Beach and looking at it was trash night, and I was like, "Where does this trash go? What have we done as a species?"
You needed mushrooms.
We're just like
No,
off,
but that's the point.
But it hit my
That's
core.
true.
It changed my core. Like it changed my DNA and the way I
This-
was perceiving it.
This is exactly what I mean.
Yeah. No, you're right.
For me, I remember I would talk to my friends and they would start asking these crazy philosophical questions, or like when they were stoned or something, and I was like, I don't need whatever it is you're doing to ask these questions, but clearly you do.
Yeah.
Maybe there are some people who are like mindless cogs, but then they have an experience like Ian was saying, and all of a sudden they start asking themselves, where's that garbage going? Then they realize, hey, wait a minute, probably not somewhere good.
Just like so many problems, they're just putting it on an island and waiting for it to go away.
They put on a garbage
Can't-
barge, kick it out, and forget about it.
And of course, we find there's mushrooms and bacteria that'll digest it and turn it into sugar. There's lots of cool
I think
stuff.
some of it is with substances. It takes away the inhibition. People may think about these things on some level, but they don't want to ask because they don't want to be the only one. They want to blend in and not.
But Ian asked himself.
Right,
did.
but you were saying
And
your
Dominic, my
friends are
friend.
posing these questions to you while you're hanging out.
There's
right?
like a desensitization without the psychedelics. Like right now, you're kind of blending into the wall. I see like the scene, but when I'm on psilocybin, you stand out. Life is very different than non-life. It becomes very apparent that we have created this thing, or someone before me built this freaking set that we're on, and now,
You just
man,
wake up one day and you're here, and you're like, look at all this stuff that exists.
it creates a value for life. I think at least psilocybin did for me.
I think a big problem, one of the big problems we've had is that millennials, and to an extent every generation before it, but growing in scale, don't understand that other people did work to make things exist that you have. So, like for example, I remember I was riding my bike across the Williamsburg Bridge in New York, and I just thought to myself, like, man, some people worked really, really hard to make this bridge happen, and I don't think twice when I ride my bike over it. I don't pay for it. I have no idea. I mean, I guess city taxes cover the costs, but it's just there. Well, one day there was some dude or some lady, and they were just like, yo, we need a bridge. And then all of these humans were like, let's work really, really hard and sweat and tears. And probably a lot of people died in the construction. Yes. And now all these people are just like, what do you mean? The bridge is just there. And it's like, you don't understand the value of what was gifted to you. And the thing about the bridge is you could be a tourist and you get free use of it. Like, you're not paying anything for this. It's just there and you get it. I think that is like the generational wealth of millennials and now Gen Z. They don't understand how much blood, sweat, and tears went into making the world so comfortable. So
I don't think any young people do. I didn't understand when I was 25. I'm not sure if it's that generation specifically. I'm more Gen X, I guess. And like, I was a fucking idiot at 25.
Yeah,
what the hell did I know?
I think.
Yeah, right. And I know my parents were because they're still idiots in their 70s, right? So like, yeah. I mean, I think it's
an
just,
ayahuasca.
No.
Yeah, I'd love to get my parents to take ayahuasca.
We need people to get access to their ancestral knowledge.
Well, this is what I'm talking about. You mentioned earlier you don't think the technology is the story, but like in the past, the story was told through new technology, like the printing press allowed us to proliferate the story or writing allowed us to proliferate the idea of God to the masses. So maybe that the metaverse or that the internet is the vessel that the story will be told.
So the post-World War II story in America was that progress solves all, and progress is the goal. Where has that gone?
Modern monetary theory.
What is progress?
No, but the story coming out of World War II was that progress. The American story is a story of progress, right? It's just progress, but like it's like the concept of growth for the sake of growth is the philosophy of cancer. Right? Progress just to make progress because it's technological progress is serving a different God. It is not serving humans, right? Whereas like I would contrast that to like an idea that could, and I mean a meta idea that could replace that would be prosperity. What does prosperity for humans look like? Because it does not always, in fact, rarely does it mean more technology. In fact, more technology is usually antithetical to prosperity for humans. It might be great for owners. God, I sound like a goddamn Marxist right now, but it's, and I am not at all. I really am not. I can't stand the Marxists.
Interesting philosophy.
But honestly, if there was one thing Karl Marx got right, it was at least the beginning of a critique of understanding that there is a relationship between a human and the value they create that matters. That's not captured in the normal way you calculate capital, right? And so, like, what is wrong with your show? You're getting me to defend the system, and Marx, I'm going crazy. I know. This is nuts.
Like called.
No, but process. Like, I'm a big believer now. Like, in the way to measure anything is how does this benefit humans? Humans, not stakeholder capitalism, and that's all nonsense. That's all a scam to screw people. But like, how am I better? How is my neighbors better? How's my family better? How are my kids better? How are my animals better? Right? And like, I like technology when it serves humans and prosperity, but like a lot of it doesn't, man.
Can I ask a question? Sorry to interrupt. How does this prosperity doctrine fit in with like your past? Because I feel like in some ways you had a very different mindset when you were 20s, when you were like the pickup artist and you were like.
Don't you ever? You can call me anything, but not pickup artist. Do you want to call
me
a
Marxist?
Just
I actually would not be upset if you called me a Marxist based on what I just said, because I kind of sound like one, but not pickup artist. That's
sorry. What's the technical term for the industry that you were sort of the head of?
I was a writer.
Yes. That's what we're gonna call it.
Or were you teaching people how to hook up?
No. No, I never did that.
Sorry, he was writing.
No. No. Don't put me. Look, I like Neil Strauss. I know him. I know that crew. I was never one of them. I was never in that world. I wrote. If you want to put me in a category, I mean, the New York Times said I invented my own literary genre, which, like, it's the New York Times, so whatever. But, like, you don't put me in a category, put, like, Bukowski or Hunter S. Thompson or that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. No, like, writing about women is not, like, that has a long history.
Yeah, I get that.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, your books, and I'm not critiquing you at all.
Right.
Like, it's just part of your story.
No. You can critique me. Just don't call me a
I just
pickup
don't-
artist.
I don't-
Those are different things.
What is the word? What is you're a writer who specialized in a very
Writing
specific
about my life.
writing about your life, which
Yes.
had a lot to do with
I was like a 20-something-year-old dude who got drunk and hooked up and acted like an idiot, like all 20
right.
something.
And now you're someone who's saying, and I think it's cool, but like.
Right. Very
We
different.
need to think about
Totally different.
how we are affecting the humans around us, how we're affecting change, how we're affecting humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you come? Like, how did this transition happen for you?
That's a very different question than how did you go from pickup artist to
Who's
this.
gonna write
You're
a
just
book now called "I Know They Serve Beer"?
Honestly, it's a great question, though. It really is. Look, I could say as simple as, well, I grew up and matured, but it's more than that. It's honestly like I had to do my emotional work. Like I had to face all the stuff I didn't want to face, all my trauma, all my issues, all the baggage that we all carry around. I carry around just as much as anyone. And I can just carry it around if I want, and that's what most people do. But at some point I realized, and it was actually after a lot of success, I had way more success than I thought I needed to be happy. And I was like 10% happier, right? It's way better to be rich than to be poor. Like, it's much nicer. But it's like only that much better. And I was like, well, okay, this. And so like, I fixed everything in my life externally, and I was still unhappy. I'm like, well, the only thing left is me. Like, that's it. Like that, and that was not an easy pill to swallow. That was into my mid 30s. Started therapy, and therapy was talk therapy. It's like a serious, in-depth psychoanalysis, and it was fine. Like, it was good. It helped me a lot. But it didn't really connect me to myself and my emotions. And there's a lot of ways to do that. For me, the thing that cracked me open was MDMA therapy. Like that was just mind-blowing to me. And that was when I was like, oh my God, I can feel love and sadness. This is like, and then that's like I started about 4 years ago. And that's really what, I kind of knew all this intellectually and I believed it, but I didn't get it really until I started to connect with myself. And once you connect with yourself, then you connect with nature. And that's when I was like, oh, like, of course God exists. And I'm like, I'll never forget, I did a session with MDMA and LSD. And I had the experience of like, it sounds crazy if you've never done psychedelics, but like the experience that, I didn't talk to God, but the experience of God. And I remember I called my friend who's Mormon, and I'm like, dude, I thought you were just an idiot who was fooled. And he's like, no. I'm like, I get it now. God is an experience. You're not actually, he's like, yes. And I'm like, oh, fuck, dude, I'm so sorry. I just thought you were stupid. Like, really? And I'm like, which a lot of religious people can be. Like, there's, I'm going to believe this because my mom said so. But he's like one of those who really like has a relationship, what he calls a relationship with God. And I understand what it means now, right? I don't frame it the way he does, but I get it. And so once you start walking down that path, then I think there's multiple ways to go down that path. Because like a lot of what I'm saying, you can get kooky ESG clowns who are like, we need to kill a bunch of humans to save the planet. No, I am not on that path. But once you start connecting to yourself and you connect everything around you, I think it just, I don't think anything I'm saying is all that revolutionary. It's just like, oh, of course. This just feels right. This seems right. This connects with what I have experienced, right? I don't know. Am I rambling or does this make
Short
sense?
answer is MDMA. That's dude.
That's
I'm
what
telling you,
Segue
man,
is.
it has been the most important thing I've ever done in my
It's
life.
incredible.
Number one.
Incredible substance. I've never used it in a therapy session,
Right.
but they do that for soldiers that have returned
Yes.
that are suffering PTSD
Yes.
and things like that.
Yep. Yeah. No, right now it's in stage 3 clinical trials to be legalized in 2023. So it's not legal. Like I had to find underground guides and all that. But when you do it, you can do it on your own. I like to have a guide and whatever, but they don't really do much. They're just kind of there. But dude, I've probably done 15 sessions in the last 4 years, and it is the most important thing I've ever done in my life. And I'm married, and I have 4 kids. And people are like, not your kids and your wife? I'm like, I wouldn't be married, and I'd be a terrible father. Like if I had not found this. Seriously.
Yeah.
Like truly.
It's amazing when you cry. Being able to cry.
Dude, the first time I ever felt love, really, I thought I had felt love. I was married with 2 kids when I first did MDMA therapy, and like almost as soon as it really hit, I'm like, oh my God, I had never felt love. Nothing remotely that deep ever in my life until I did that. I didn't realize how traumatized and how emotionally constipated I was, and I had no idea. And then as I got deeper, man, I got into the grief. God, that was about 2.5 years in. It was nothing but grief, man, for like a year. It didn't matter what I did. I had so much grief in me, like that I had to feel that I'd pushed away my whole life. I just wouldn't feel.
How did you stay sane between sessions while you were processing?
That's a great question. I had so really, really good mentors around who had walked this path decades before and kind of knew and helped me. But it's basically called integration, right? So, you know, I had a talk therapist, a different one from before, you know, and I actually had to really learn self-care, truly deep, like, okay, I can't be working 15 hours a day anymore. I can't this, I can't, that's not going to work. And so journaling every day, which I've been doing for a while anyway, but I got serious about it. You know, like got very serious about nutrition, very serious about sleep, all this sort of stuff. And I changed. It's crazy for me to think about what I was like even 6 or 7 years ago, but especially like 10 or 15 years ago. It was, in a lot of ways I was the same person, but not, it's almost like I don't even know that dude from 15 years ago. Like he's like I almost just feel sad for him, you know?
Do you ever want to change your name?
No, not at all. No. I don't mean this in a way like repudiate my past or I was a bad person.
That's right.
No, I mean I did some terrible stuff I shouldn't have done.
That's right.
But like I don't mean it like that. I just mean like I don't have any connection to that dude anymore.
So your diet, you were talking earlier that you source most of your meat from your farm,
Yeah.
and a lot of stuff locally. Like,
Yeah.
what did it used to be? What did you change
I mean,
to?
you know, like I've been eating healthy for about 15 years, meaning like kind of like a paleo ancestral diet. You know, not a lot of carbs, no seed oils. I
Of
knew
course, that's
that,
right.
but like it was like, oh yeah, you know, I mean, I go to Whole Foods, that chicken's got to be healthy. Man, have you seen how chickens are raised and he doesn't? Well, I'm sure it's horrible, right?
They don't even walk. They get stuffed in
Oh,
cages.
dude, it's the worst. And so, like, once you kind of understand that, it's like, okay, you eat what the animals eat, right? So even if they're healthy chickens, organic, and they're raised in these horrible, you know, massive pens where they, you know, they don't walk on the ground, they walk on dead chickens or whatever. It's like, that's terrible. That's unhealthy.
We got farms all over the place out here.
Yeah.
You drive 5 minutes, you get fresh farm tenderloins, you get fresh eggs, fresh butter.
Yep.
Man, we've been cooking with real farm butter.
It's amazing.
It is. You can't compare it. No, like,
Yeah.
so we've got salted and unsalted, and you taste it and you're like, what is this?
Yeah.
And then you take the store-bought butter and you're like, this is not food.
No, it's not.
It really is crazy.
It's actually not in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
It was interesting how you were talking about like the story of our time, and it sounds like it's kind of a personal thing for the individual needs to realize their own story. Like what you did with the MDMA therapy and talk therapy. Basically, it was the talking. The MDMA is the tool that you use during the talking.
Right. Well, one's about the intellect and one's about the emotions. You got to go both. Like, you can't just do. I know plenty of people who've done a ton of emotional work but are flighty as hell and have dumb ideas in their head, right? And then I know plenty of people who've thought their way as far as they can but won't feel anything, right? They're both are important, both are relevant, and you can't just do one. You know, like, if you want to be balanced and kind of whole, you kind of have to feel and think. That's why we got different parts of our brain. It's not just one or the other.
When you like come up on a situation that makes you want to cry or that makes you want to like, at what point do you stop yourself from crying, and at what point do you let yourself cry?
I try not to stop myself from. I mean, unless like it's inappropriate or weird, or I'm at like some, I don't know,
You don't want to cry right
dinner
now.
and the butterfly.
If you
comes
guys gave me a
through.
reason to cry, I would cry.
Yeah,
like,
do it.
but there's, I mean, I'm not sure like what it would be. Like, I'm sure we could talk about something, but yeah, like I don't really worry about that anymore. Like, I've never been worried about, well, what does someone else think about like my emotion? That's never been a problem for me. For me, it's been feeling the emotion. You know, like I didn't have that bad of a childhood in certain ways. Like, no one sexually abused me or beat me, or thank God, none of that. I just had narcissistic parents who didn't care about me, and I was essentially abandoned as a kid. You know, not literally. Like, I had food and shelter, but like emotionally, there was no one there for me. And that sort of it's called relational trauma. That sort of a relational trauma is actually, it's hard to understand because there's not a great narrative around it, and most people don't understand. The closest person I've ever heard who understood was someone who actually helped. They were in the Romania after the fall of the wall, and there were all these abandoned kids, and they worked in orphanage there, and they would tell me like
The
like,
Romanian orphanages are crazy.
right. So my life wasn't that bad, but imagine like like someone like that who had parents and were there but still kind of ignored you. So it's like on the scale of relational trauma, they're like a 10 and I'm like a 5, right? But it's still anywhere on that scale is not good. And so like just accepting that, right? That okay, I wasn't sexually abused or physically abused. I've never been to war. You know, no one's raped me. Like most people think of trauma as some horrible physical event, and that is trauma. But that's not the only type of trauma, and that's not the only way to have deep emotional impacts from things, you know? And it's not like, dude, some people will do this and like all kinds of repressed trauma will come up, like, oh, my dad or my stepdad raped me and I pushed it. That happens all the time. None of that happened with me. Like I knew exactly what happened to me. It was just like I had never felt any of my grief from my mom never spending any time with me. Like I just pushed that away because when you're 4, it's overwhelming. You know, but now when you're 40 and you're taking MDMA and you're laying on this sofa in, you know, New York, wherever, and like it comes up and it's like, oh, and you like safe and whatever, you can feel it, then you feel it, you know. But then it's like you're free now.
Does this impact how you parent? I'm assuming. Do you make different choices?
I mean, in fact, if you want me to start crying, if I think about what I was like as a parent 7 years ago with my Bishop, my oldest, who just turned 8, versus now, like I was on the scale of parents, I was a very good parent compared to most parents 7 years ago. I am a fundamentally different parent now. I'm 100 times better. I'm so much more present, more emotionally connected, more attached. I meet my children's needs so much better.
You got him learning like Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
He does go to Brazilian jiu-jitsu, actually. My 8-year-old does, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
totally.
Yeah. It's a good idea. For real.
Yeah. But, okay, funny you bring that up. When he was 4, I pushed him into it, you know, because, like, I'm big into that. And he liked it, but, like, he kind of didn't really want it, and I was pushing a little too hard, and I just was wise enough to realize, all right, I'm pushing him. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to, you know. Yeah. And so then I backed off, and he quit. Okay, like I was disappointed, which is like silly because it's his life, not mine. And I stopped. I let go of all that. And then 3 years later, he's like, Dad, I want to start going again.
You know what kids need for this stuff? They need to have other kids around them.
Yeah.
So the issue is when you bring your kids, say like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it's a bunch of adults.
Yeah. But he went to kids classes.
So, all right, well, I typically what I find.
I think I was just pushing him. Like he was
pushing him too hard.
Yeah, he didn't want me looming over him.
Right.
You know,
and want to hang out with their friends. That was kind of the point I was getting to.
Right.
So like I've had friends who, one example is skateboarding. A friend of mine said they wanted to skate, got a skateboard,
Seriously?
and then eventually didn't want to do it anymore. But their parents were like, "You have to. We bought you a board. You're using it."
Yeah.
But then when you have all of these other skateboarders all cheering you on, and then you have your own group of friends, all of a sudden you're like, this is my community. You get into it. And so, you know.
Yeah, well, but there's also, I think, an intrinsic versus extrinsic, right? And so my son's pretty independent, and thankfully. And I was pushing him, and I think he was naturally rebelling against that. And so when I stopped pushing and let go, then he was able to find it on his own and his own desire for it as opposed to mine.
So pushing a little is probably a good thing, just so he knows.
Introducing is a good thing. Pushing is different. You know?
And you also should have him play Magic the Gathering.
100%.
Well,
Wait,
make him
save?
a poker player.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, shit.
So a lot of people don't understand. Magic the Gathering is chess and poker combined.
I got to say it earlier.
And a lot of the top Magic players.
What I
top
have.
Poker players.
Fuck.
There's a famous quote from one of these guys, and they said, you know, you play Magic the Gathering and poker. Is you know what is it being a top poker player harder? And he's like, if one game has 13,000 cards you're trying to guess, one has 52. He's like, so you know, poker is a bit easier for us. But it was a good point. And I remember when I was younger trying to explain it to people. People often hear Magic the Gathering and they assume you like dress like a wizard.
Yeah, right.
And then you're like
Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, it's like you go to a local game shop, and there's like, you know, I would be skateboarding, and then afterwards I'd go to the game shop. There'd be comics, there'd be art. We'd play Marvel vs. Capcom, and then people would play, you know, Magic or whatever. And none of these people were into D&D. Not a single one played D&D. It was just like
really, there's no overlap between those two communities.
There probably is.
Here's the one I love.
Oh yeah, right.
But in my comic shop, there was none. There was no D&D.
Oh wow.
It was comic books. It was Marvel. It was you know, playing arcades. It was skateboarding.
Yeah.
It was just like another thing. Like we were tired. Our bodies were racked. It's like I just learned how to backside tail slide. It's like, let's just draft or something so we can sit down and still do something.
Yeah.
And so then you're getting strategic development after your physical development.
Yeah. No, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Now the same company owns Dungeons and Dragons and Magic. The same company owns them both, so
Yeah.
you might start to see overlap, but it's like completely different. One's like do you ever play D&D? It's like an acting exercise basically,
right,
and then the other game is like a math exercise.
We really got to do that modern political war game thing that the Clintons, or was it Clinton? It was like Podesta did. Do you hear about that?
No.
In 2020, they basically played D&D, but it was like modern politics. And then like one of the Democrats was like, if Trump wins, we're seceding from the union, and like they would roll die to see what would happen.
Yeah, I did.
That would be funny. We really got to do that. We could film it. It'd be hilarious.
That would be funny. You get a bunch of people in who are super into that. That could be fun.
Look at Ian, you're Hillary. You're running in 2024. All right,
Let's go.
Roll, what is it? Roll to see if you get the votes.
Yeah, roll to see if people actually like you this time. Good luck.
No. You don't. Well, you do your base stats, but like I'm pretty sure her charisma would be like minus.
Yeah, it'd be like a minus
negative.
one.
minus
check.
one.
Oh, Hillary.
It goes down.
It wasn't always that bad.
What would Trump have in terms, like because,
Charisma?
Yeah.
15 or 16.
Really
probably.
high.
Very high.
Yeah.
Very high.
But his intelligence would be lower. He's got more
No.
charisma than intelligence.
No.
Intelligence would be high too. What's like a negative?
Wisdom. He'd have low wisdom.
Yeah, a negative
Because
charisma.
he pisses people off with his statements.
Yeah.
And then they're
We
like,
got to do this.
Yeah.
they're like, why did he say that?
What other
He's like, I don't
characters?
even know why I said that.
Yeah, right.
Because of my low wisdom. You're right. He isn't. He is very intelligent.
No, he
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
He's a calculating guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, this would be hilarious. Map out. We should literally do. We should do it live, and like war game out what 2024 would look like based on modern politics today to see what it would be. You know,
I
Dude,
love this. I think it's great.
DeSantis have there's all kinds
Yeah.
of wild cards too.
we would do like a primary, and then it's like you got to roll to see if you get the votes or something.
I'm liking Ron DeSantis more and more. Hey, did you guys see Carrie Lake won?
Finally,
Finally,
she won.
after so much time.
She won every county.
She was great. I was in favor of her when she called out that CNN woman. I'm
Yes.
well,
Yeah.
she's obviously amazing.
It's amazing.
She's accessible, at least to me so far. I've interviewed her twice. I've been on the show. We interviewed her twice, and like we talked about a local voting app that you could use, where like you could set your slider for like I want to put 7% of my taxes towards this local thing, 4% towards this, and it'd be like a Tinder app kind of where I could say like, okay, hey everyone, I want to put a fountain on Main Street. And then if people are going through the app, they see it, they swipe right, it goes into their little slide bar thing, and then they can allocate like 2% of their taxes to the thing. And she loved the idea. I think it's really like things are becoming very real with the governors.
That's an example of technology that could be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That's very cool. Yeah.
You into the convention of states? I keep hearing it get tossed around.
I mean, I don't know. Like, it wouldn't shock. There's almost nothing you could tell me about the future of America that would shock me now. Like a complete chaotic civil war, a federalist, kind of quasi breakup, but not really. I don't know. Something.
Woke communist gulags.
Of course, that wouldn't shock. I mean, like that, they already have those in Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
You
was
know,
saying yesterday that it seems like all the cultures on Earth now have come together and they're all forcing each other on themselves. And so that's this chaos. It's not like an accident or like, oops, we fucked up. It's like, no, this is what happens when
Nothing
you
would
blend
make
all the
me
cultures.
happy.
He got Ian swearing.
Yeah, I'm back to my old self.
Nothing
on
would make
over,
me
guys.
happier than just like local rule for everyone. Like, okay, you take care of yourself, we'll take care of ourselves. Let's just like, I got no problem. Like, you want to inject the hormones into your kids and eat each other? Okay, cool. Go to New York. That's where they do that.
Except they want rules over you.
Oh, of course, right? No, I get
That's
that.
the
And we got to
No, I
mediate
know.
the
100%.
atmosphere and like the rivers and the oceans.
Well, that's
and,
the control thing. That's like, okay, if I can find a lever of control where you are responsible for something I want, I'm convinced. I've been skeptical of climate stuff for a long time for two reasons. One is because the people who are pushing it are always the same people who are pushing whatever authoritarian bullshit that comes up, right? So it's never like someone I'm like, okay, well, this person's really smart and they know their stuff. It's always like, Al Gore, right? Who's like, it's that type. But then the other thing is, it's like, hold on a minute. So you want to make me responsible for something that you can't really measure, you can't attribute to me, but it's going to have to fundamentally alter my behavior and my output, but you get to decide what that is? No, that's not going to work, right? And like, whenever someone's like, trying to make other people responsible for something and it means they get to control them, That's the reddest of red flags. Even if, like, yeah, I mean, you can look at the data. It's gotten hotter in most parts of the world the last couple of years or whatever, et cetera, et cetera. Like, even if there's some truth to it.
The more tangible example would be like poisoning the waterway inadvertently upriver, like dumping chemicals in, and then the other community that
What am I doing wrong?
Like, you could be, okay, you dumped DDT up here.
What the
all
fuck?
these fish died. Like, okay, like, you can figure that out, you know? Like, that's tort law can handle that, you know?
You are a lawyer.
Supposed to
after all.
avoid the purple guys or something?
I did not take the bar.
law for it.
Yeah.
Let's go to. We're gonna go to super chats.
Okay.
If
No,
you
you're
haven't,
not. No, you're not. You're not. Another sad bullshit. No, it's shit. We're selling. Oh, they fucked up. They fucked up. Oh, poor guy. They found it the hard way. Like 99% through. Like, shit, dude. This sucks. Yeah, I'm restarting. Poor guy. It's so stupid. You don't think there's like anything like that you have to do. But no, you have to avoid these purple things. It is what it is. Which way to go? Okay. Go this way. I did the thing.
Well done.
Huzzah.
Speed, dexterity, and cunning are all valuable traits.
Sure, dog. I did it. What other videos can I listen to? I play.
New recruits means the need to tame additional mounts. Only the bravest, or most foolish, are able to capture a wild flayed wing.
Wait, what? The fuck is this? I'm gonna better see this.
I'm so hungry. Let me out. I'll tell you what, first guy that lets me out gets his own spin-off. Not you, Cleveland.
Family Guy is incredibly popular. One of the most well-known and longest-running animated shows in television history. Whether you love it or hate it, it's a pop culture phenomenon. Family Guy has been on the air since 1999. To put that in perspective, Family Guy has lasted through 5 United States presidents, 25 WWE champions, and 0 Andre 3000 solo albums. Wait, what? So naturally, with this kind of success for a TV show, comes a spin-off. It's a trend that's been happening for decades. Friends was super popular, so we got Joey. Jimmy Neutron was super popular, so we got Planet Sheen. And Family Guy is super popular, so we got The Cleveland Show. But in general, there were some glaring problems that kept it from ever becoming truly successful. The immediate problem everyone had was simple.
I like this show.
Why Cleveland? Out of all the characters in Family Guy with bright and vibrant personalities, why did they pick one of the most lackluster characters in the entire show to get his own spin-off? Sure, Cleveland has had some funny and memorable gags in Family Guy, like being in his bathtub and falling and saying no, 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 but aside from a moment here and there, Cleveland was one of the most boring characters in early Family Guy. But regardless of the decision-making behind the choice, Cleveland ended up getting his own spin-off in 2009. And it actually wasn't bad by any means, it just wasn't great. The word that comes to mind when I think of The Cleveland Show, mediocre. The humor was a lot more mild and toned down than Family Guy, and a lot of the jokes just didn't land. But one thing that was very enjoyable about The Cleveland Show was Cleveland's family. Cleveland's son, Cleveland Jr., went from being an ultra hyperactive small child in Family Guy to an overweight, lovable loser in The Cleveland Show. Cleveland's new wife in the show, Donna, was pretty awesome actually. Cleveland's former wife was not only boring, but such an over-the-top, stereotypical angry black woman that it could be cringe to watch at times. But Donna was strong and bold while also managing to be patient and understanding. Cleveland's new stepdaughter, Roberta, was like the opposite of Meg Griffin. She's popular, well-respected, with a strong and bold personality. And then there's Cleveland's new stepson, Rollo. Rollo is undoubtedly the coolest character in the Cleveland show. A quick-witted and street-smart 5-year-old, Rollo is packed with personality. He's smooth with the ladies, and he's got the wisdom of a 30-year-old who's been in the streets his whole life. But he's also still a kid at the end of the day, and enjoys kickball and sugary cereals. But then again, who doesn't enjoy kickball and sugary cereals? These characters were the nucleus of the Cleveland show, and they were great. A common complaint about Family Guy is that it usually feels cruel. The Griffin family almost seem to be in competition to see who can be the biggest a-hole, and the majority of Family Guy is built around all these characters doing and saying mean things to each other on a regular basis. But with the Cleveland show, there was a lot more heart, a lot more soul. There was a genuine sense of love and caring between these characters in this family. Rollo and Roberta slowly coming around to Cleveland and Cleveland Jr. being their new family, and the dynamic between all these characters just had a warm feeling to it that was refreshing to see. Sure, they could be mean to each other at times, as all families can, but the family of the Cleveland show had a genuine sense of warmth, not to mention characters with very unique and defined personalities. But unfortunately, aside from that, the show never quite stuck with viewers as much as Family Guy, and it showed in the ratings. And in 2013, after 4 seasons, the Cleveland show was canceled. In July 2013, Seth MacFarlane confirmed on Twitter that since the Cleveland show was no more, Cleveland would be returning to Family Guy. And not only Cleveland, his new family would be joining him. This was great news. Cleveland being back in Quahog would be a welcome addition to the show since he was a main character in early episodes, which is widely considered to be the best era of Family Guy. And this wasn't the same Cleveland. When he was on Family Guy, Cleveland didn't have much of a personality at all, but since getting his own show, Cleveland had become much more energetic, loud, and boisterous. Adding the new Cleveland back to Family Guy would surely be interesting and a breath of fresh air. But perhaps equally as exciting was the prospect of Cleveland's new family being new characters on Family Guy. The new slow and lethargic Cleveland Jr., the bold and beautiful Roberta, the strong and sassy Donna, and the coolest kid in the world, Rollo. There was a world of possibilities with these new well-defined characters entering the fray, especially since a good portion of the audience already knows these characters and has an attachment to them. I couldn't wait to see how these characters would interact with the characters of Quahog. Would Cleveland Jr. become good friends with Chris? How would Loretta interact with Meg? Would Stewie and Rollo become friends, or would they become rivals? There was a world of...
Hold on, I gotta pee. I'm enjoying the video though. Let's see what else happens.
Possibilities. But when the Brown family showed up on Family Guy, every single one of those possibilities were crushed with one line from Stewie.
Man? Yeah, sup. Keep walking, you boondocks ripoff.
Immediately, Rollo went from being cooler than a cucumber, streetwise and charismatic, to being a joke. All of his qualities that made him so likable were thrown out of the window for a 5-second gag with Stewie. But it gets worse. Rollo's sister Roberta, as of the time of this writing, in the 7 years since Cleveland's family has moved back to Quahog, Roberta has said 0 words. 0. Zip. Zilch. She's gone from being a well-respected and bold young woman to a background character. You'd be lucky if you got a facial expression out of Roberta these days. Obviously, it's not the Cleveland show, so no one expects her to have nearly as big a role on Family Guy as she had on her previous shows. But to have a character with that much personality that fans are familiar with, and to have them say 0 words for over 7 years, it's kind of mind-boggling. Cleveland Jr. isn't too far behind. Since returning to Family Guy, Cleveland Jr. is a key character in only one episode, A Shot in the Dark. In the episode, Peter accidentally shoots Cleveland Jr., and it ends up being an episode about hate crimes against black people. Jr. has a handful of lines in this episode, but aside from this episode, nothing. With the exception of this episode, Cleveland Jr. has said close to 0 words in over 7 years. No friendship with Chris or Meg, no interaction with the other characters, nothing. The Cleveland show character aside from Cleveland with the most lines on Family Guy has by far been Donna. She's basically become a part of Lois's crew of married women along with Bonnie, and she has the occasional line or two, usually something sassy. They've definitely not showcased her layered personality very much and have focused more on her sassiness for the most part, but that's to be expected since she's playing a smaller role now. But it's nice that we at least get to see her interact with other characters. Family Guy is a show that's known for having a lot of characters, from the main characters to the supporting characters to the various characters around town. Greased up deaf guy, anyone? And almost all of these characters are occasionally given some lines and even sometimes key roles in episodes. So it's strange that these characters who were once super important to an entire show, characters with so much personality and so many layers, characters that the majority of the fan base knows and feels some sort of attachment to, have become nobodies. Simply background characters with little to no importance at all to the show. We've heard and seen more from Joe and Quagmire's family members that don't live with them than we have from Cleveland's family that lives right across the street from Peter and the main family. You have to wonder if this was intentional. Was Seth MacFarlane or Fox so disappointed with the outcome of the Cleveland show that they just wanted to scrub any remains of the show from existence? Or do the writers of Family Guy just feel the characters lack the personality to be relevant characters on Family Guy? For now, to see this warm, lovable family, we'll have to stick to watching Cleveland show reruns since it airs in syndication on a regular basis. The Cleveland show was a failed experiment, but it brought some likable characters and some enjoyable moments, and for that, I think it deserves appreciation. What do you think? Do you want to see more of Cleveland's family on Family Guy? Sound off in the comments, and be sure to like this video and subscribe to Toon Fridge for more cartoon content. Thanks for watching, guys.
I really like the Cleveland show. It's really weird. I guess I was the demographic that they wanted. Yeah, it sucks, dude. Bye, Felicia. Let's find another video to listen to. I'll give you a chance, Jimmy. Let's hear what you got to say.
Joe Biden said this. Remember when he was running for president? He said this. Do you remember this?
President Trump has not punished senior Saudi leaders. Would you?
Yes. I would make it very clear. We were not going to, in fact, sell more weapons to them. We were going to, in fact, make them pay the price and make them, in fact, the pariah that they are. They have to be held accountable.
So you want to see it? You want to see him do it? Here comes Joe Biden. Watch him hold him accountable. Watch this. Look at that.
Hey,
bam! In your fucking face, pariah.
Pariah. There, pal.
That's right. And what did he say, by the way?
President Trump has not punished senior Saudi leaders. Would you?
Yes.
Yes.
I would make it very clear. We were not going to, in fact, sell more weapons.
Really?
So, you can't hear it. You can't see it, but he's there fist bumping the same guy he's talking shit about recently. Fuck that dude. But, you know, it is what it is. If you're a fucking politician, I guess you can lie all the time.
You're not. Boom! Awkward. Biden trip to Saudi Arabia, followed by $3 billion sale of U.S. missiles. Awkward? Did they not see the fist bump? What are you talking about? Everything's cool. It wasn't awkward. They're chums. Come on, Bloomberg, keep up. They did a fist bump. So Nancy Pelosi defends her Taiwan visit amid China's tension. She says never give in to autocrats. Yeah, never get unless the autocrat is a Saudi tyrant who controls vast oil reserves that the West desperately needs. So that's what this is about. So we don't have values as Americans, as a country. We don't have values, right? Because values, you stick by them even when it's hard, meaning you wouldn't sell weapons to Saudi Arabia even if you needed the oil. You couldn't. You'd stick by that value of not rewarding a guy who chopped up a journalist for the Washington Post into little pieces. And we know he did that.
He did.
Well, what if your values are oil? You think it's easy for them to have to humiliate themselves this way? We got values.
So Biden went there to try to get some oil, and the only outcome is that more arms sales to the Mideast dictatorships. That's what we got. Yay, we did it! We got more arms to Saudi Arabia. We did it! I was worried. They chopped up a journalist for the Washington Post. Is this gonna make it mucky? Is this gonna muck up the gears?
Yeah, you gotta grease the oil wheels.
That's right. Ironically, you have to grease the oil wheels. So the U.S. approved Thursday the potential sale of additional Patriot missiles and related equipment to Saudi Arabia in a deal valued as much as $3.05 billion, just weeks after an awkward meeting between President Joe Biden and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, known as MBS. But guess what? OPEC is set to raise its oil output by just 100,000 barrels a day. An amount analysts said was an insult to the U.S. President Joe Biden. So, see?
All's well that ends well.
So he went over there. He sucked on his schlong. He gave him the fist bump. He threw every value he had under the rug. He got rid of his integrity, went against his campaign promises. And what did he get for it? He got an insult. For all that sucking up, Joe Biden got an insult from Saudi Arabia. And they still sold him the weapons anyway.
Jimmy, was Venezuela nicer than Saudi Arabia?
It seems like it.
Because we're not talking about Juan Guaido. They must have been pretty cool overall compared to how Saudi Arabia took it when we...
So Biden departed Saudi Arabia last month without a firm commitment for an increase in oil production that could ease the payment of gasoline, saying only that based on his conversations, he expects further steps in the coming... So wow! See, things are moving forward. He expects further steps. Right now, it's only a fist bump, but in the coming weeks, maybe a handshake or even a high five. Things are moving forward. How about a high five, MBS? Yeah. So, arms sales to Saudi Arabia. I don't know if you remember what he said. I want to play it one more time. This is what he said.
President Trump has not punished senior Saudi leaders. Would you?
Yes, I would make it very clear. We were not going to, in fact, sell more weapons to them. We were going to, in fact, make them pay the price and make them, in fact, the pariah that they are. They have to be held accountable.
So, and that's just funny, too, that he's saying that, because right now because they're upset that MBS, the Saudis, they chopped up a journalist for the Washington Post, Khashoggi, and that upset us. But right now, Joe Biden is trying to chop up a journalist called Julian Assange.
Big true.
And he's doing it right out in public. And so that's why it's a big joke.
Didn't Khashoggi bring it up to him, or did he just bring up the one Palestinian journalist?
He just brought up the Palestinian journalist, and he brought up Abu Ghraib. So when they met, the prince threw that in Biden's face, which is funny. Why wouldn't you? Hey, we're doing live stand-up comedy coming to your...
Damn, dude.
Dark Soul 9669 super saying, I find it really disingenuous with the concept of not touching my content for Mythic Raid and Mythic Plus. Their inclusion already removed my content with challenge modes and Heroic 10 to 25 being peak, screwed my roster at the end of MOP. That's a funny one. Anytime something is a fundamental gameplay format change, some people are going to be winners, some people are going to be losers. And this kind of goes to, Heroic 10 being a thing. Back, of course, when Heroic is the hardest thing in the game, it meant that if you were a guild that was only doing 10-man raiding, which my guild was, then, okay, kill Lei Shen. All right, let's try Jinrock and Horadon on Heroic. And, like, yeah, sure, maybe the council fight was way harder in 10-man. Because the whole thing with Throne of Thunder, it was overtuned in 10 for, like, the first few weeks. I very keenly remember that going on. But we have the option, right? And then as soon as Mythic 20 comes out, now there is no feasible way for a subsection of the WoW player base to engage in that style of difficult content without changing their fundamental social format. Yeah. Even though, yes, Heroic 10 and Heroic 25 were very different modes. 25 was like typically the one that was taken the most seriously, but it's just an interesting thing in terms of gameplay format. The same way if you really enjoyed those challenge modes. I mean, I remember like the challenge mode rewards in WoD were really cool. I have the Hunter challenge mode set from MOP. Those were awesome.
I don't.
But yeah, they don't exist anymore. Yeah. And then it's kind of tricky because if we change up Mythic Raiding, if we change up Mythic Plus,
wait, what?
There's loads of people who, you know, for whom those are now like the pillars of the game.
What the fuck is this bullshit?
That's what's really challenging about an MMO.
Call your sword.
It's really hard to like actually solve because there's so many problems where like you look at the flex system and that's done so much good, right? It's done so much good for, oh, we've 10 people doing heroic. Oh, 11th just logged on. All right, let's go.
What's that again now?
But it feels like that came at the cost of completely destroying so many rosters.
Yeah.
And so many like ways to move up. And you can't make Mythic scalable, otherwise you destroy Mythic. Basically. There's maybe the way you could maybe have it flex within a point, but because people want to do the best, they'll find the best skill point there and do it that way. So that's why it needs to stay that way. So it's like, it's almost as if they would need to go back in time and go, okay, instead of adding a flex difficulty mode and then making sure everything flexes, I guess they would almost need to do something else there. Something else completely and entirely. Where it's like, if someone logs in for a raid night and they're 11 and 10's already there, you need a way for 11 not to feel left out.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you physically do that outside of make it so I don't know, I guess you would like you'd want to reduce the barrier to raiding and reduce the amount of time it takes and then introduce some element of replayability. So then, you know, they kind of go through in 10 and then one of them goes, oh, I'll sit out next week and let number 11 take the spot. And then that's kind of a little less stakes involved, so more freedom and kind of more, hey, we can do whatever we want and this is fine. But then I don't know if that would particularly work. Or maybe you have like a different activity that's flexible. And that's like a, hey, whoever logs on, we just play this flexible activity together. Versus, oh, there's 10 of us today, let's go raid. So I don't know. I'd love to see, like we're saying with Azeroth with Murlocs, I'd love to see a different branching path in time where they went, fuck it, everything's 10 man. Because I have a funny feeling that would be a substantially healthier raiding base. Probably a lot of damage done in the meantime.
Yeah. That would be fascinating.
Yeah.
That would be fascinating. Right, so an orange sea lion. Super saying, Matt hit the nail on the head. I can't stand Mythic Plus, so I don't play retail. It just feels so much like WoW Diablo. If I wanted rifts, I'd play Diablo. And it's like, what is the thing that does that? It's the time pressure. And the time pressure just completely changes the texture of the content, and there you go. Once it's like that, you can't really undo it. So I wonder. I've long wondered what a no timer, this is one of the supers from earlier, what a no timer, like, hey, we're going to make this dungeon feel like a heroic raid. Like, just things are harder, every boss has an extra mechanic. This is a true major challenge for 5 players that will drop, you know, incredibly strong gear, and it has a weekly lockout. Basically like a mega dungeon. Maybe the idea that you could have a mega dungeon come out with a normal mode and a heroic mode, or maybe a heroic mode and a mythic mode or something, with the idea being that like that mythic mega dungeon will legit be like maybe in difficulty somewhere between heroic and mythic, or you know, as hard as they feel they can make a piece of 5-player content. I've always wondered what that would be like, because I think it could be a really fun challenge, but only in the context where it can be a wipe fest. That's the thing. Like, a really hard boss that's a wipe fest feels like good and fun, and that's what raiders do. That's what we like. But you can't experience that in a hard dungeon in WoW unless you have decently low gear and you're doing a new mega dungeon, and I suppose that's only really applicable you know, for a few months of an expansion. Whereas, yeah, like in Mythic Plus, you cannot have a boss be like that because it completely destroys the timer. And I wonder how much that limits what they can do with bosses. Just food for thought.
I think massively.
Yeah.
Because even with timers, you can't even have bosses that have like substantial down phases without working that into the timer. And then that gets a bit weird and confusing, and people probably don't like it having like downtime and stuff like that. Whereas that's like a really important part to overall boss fight flow of, oh, the boss has jumped away or the boss is shielded. Something, again, I've also learned in Mini Healer, where that's like a really interesting thing, where it's like, yeah, you're not doing any damage for a bit, but you still have to do other things. That's like kind of, that turns into a, oh, I need to speedrun this mechanic, which is kind of like a bit shitty versus solve it properly. And time pressure is just a little bit kind of, feels cheap in so many ways.
Yeah. Well, to hit another dimension of that from Chronic Love, I can time plus 20 keys, but because I don't have the time to Mythic Raid, I'm stuck with suboptimal gear. Also don't like the fewer new dungeons to keep the old ones. I think they're referring to the idea that this is a bit weird in Season 1 of Dragonflight. So Dragonflight ships with 8 dungeons. Only 4 of them will be Mythic Plus in Season 1, and then 4 returning dungeons in the past will be part of the Mythic Plus pool. And I think the big question there is, like, a Legion dungeon being a part of Mythic Plus makes sense. Those Legion dungeons ship with Mythic Plus. But Mists of Pandaria dungeon, interesting. That was made during a different era. But at least I can say from personal experience that those were really fun on challenge mode. So there is that, and it's a bit weird because, like, in the long term, it does mean that the Mythic Plus loot pool will be completely different between every single season. So you're not just, you know,
literally like a minute ago,
grinding an item you already have, but at a higher item level. But I feel like these are benefits that we're not going to feel right now. The only thing we could feel right now is
I
just
probably wouldn't mind buying viewers,
that
but
the
like
expansion comes with 8 dungeons, but when it comes out,
there's no
I
price.
can only do 4 of them.
You didn't say
it's
anything.
relevant. Because like, what happens if
you
know what happens if you go and let's say life builds you really enjoy, and life builds is like your Mauve Souls or something, or your Dark Heart Thicket, where you're happy to just do a whole bunch of them, but then it's not there in the next season.
Yeah.
And whatever it's replaced, well, I suppose Blizzard would, if they were replacing a life builds, they would almost certainly want to have a fast dungeon in the new roster.
Yeah,
but it's certainly
fucking tunes, I think.
yeah, it's certainly a new design space that they're entering, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And then the thing of gear viability, that's always been an interesting one. Personally, I am a fan of, like, look, if there was a way for raid gear to be best in raid, Mythic Plus gear to be best in Mythic Plus, PvP gear to be best in PvP, which already exists, I'd be okay with that. I wouldn't feel threatened by that. In fact, if Mythic Plus gear was just better for Mythic Plus and maybe not so good for raid, I'd almost even prefer that because I'd have less friggin' pressure.
Well, that's exactly the thing. They need to do that. There is no ifs and buts about it. For like for these pillars to remain separate and people to, like, with limited time to enjoy the game, they fucking have to. Because the only other thing is, at the minute, you just Mythic Plus until you die, and then you go Mythic Raid because there's no point doing anything else, basically, a lot of the time. Obviously, if you're like in a really good guild who'll just smash heroic, then that's sufficient. But generally speaking, there's so little point, and it's like these things are like standing all over each other and cannibalizing each other. And I don't really believe too much in content cannibalizing other content most of the time. But I've seen it and felt it so much that, like, I would like to raid a lot more often. I don't even mind like pugs going pretty bad in heroic, but it's just, to me, the entire time, like, this is such a fucking drastic waste of my time, because the way for me to spend my time to achieve the goals that the game have set out for me, which is generally speaking the goals you're going to want to achieve, is to just fucking smash my head against the Mythic Plus wall all day long.
And here is where there's a super from Thomas, which is tackling the exact same thing that you've said, but from a very different angle, because Thomas supered, thank you, saying, personally, I see the changes done to Mythic Plus since Legion have been beneficial. As a heroic raider, I have access to Mythic tier loot without needing to raid Mythic.
Yeah, but why is that beneficial to you if you're not raiding Mythic? What do you need Mythic gear for?
Because it'll, I suppose, be better for Heroic. Or because it's a reward, it's a tier of reward that you could not get before, and now it feels like an upgrade that you can. But then for some other people, the fact that you can do that means that now it's a new thing that they feel like they have to do. And I guess that's the problem of having these parallel forms of gearing that cross over so much.
Yeah.
And I think from Blizzard's perspective, obviously PvP gear doesn't cross over because it's only really at its super high item level within PvP. And because they know that like a raider maybe will hate doing PvP, but will be more likely to enjoy a dungeon. So I suppose for Blizzard, like, do they see it as raiders doing both?
Well, they clearly are, because that's what people do. Some people Mythic raid and only do Mythic Plus for the gear. Other people, do both. Some people just push M plus keys and don't Mythic raid unless they need a specific bit of gear. And I think that is such like a minority class of player that it's like
Is it? Because that's like that's going to be a lot of people who are actually playing the game right now, though. Maybe it's a minority in comparison to like a headcanon of the overall group of people that are interested in WoW. But I wonder what it is to the groups of people who play WoW.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the thing, right? They've designed the game for that player. They designed the game for that player, not designed the game for other players. So those are the players they have left, but they clearly want the other players, but they have to get them back, which means they have to change what they're doing. Otherwise, they'll just continue to go down the thing. I highly doubt most have the time to do both M plus and raid, and that's the thing where then you get a different class of player that's allowed to play World of Warcraft in a way that like the goals of the game align with you, which is people who mono game the shit out of that 6 hours a day. Obviously, you don't need to do 6 hours a day. You can be relatively time efficient, but it's like it's just not really. It's not. It is just takes a lot of time to play the game, and it's like especially now I'm trying to like play only a couple hours a week. Fuck me, like the game is basically unplayable to me at this point.
If Mythic Plus didn't have depletion, and like there's probably targeted fixes to a bunch of this stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe a situation where they try to make it so the raid gear is best for raiding, the PV or the Mythic Plus gear is best for Mythic Plus. Maybe they could do that via set bonus if they really wanted to.
Oh, I wasn't done listening. Oh well. At this point, I'm gonna go to sleep. Have a great night. Take care. Be sweet to your loved ones. Life or your time on this planet is extremely short. Be nice to people and your loved ones. Take care.